After my biological son returned, my parents sent me to Exile Island. Everyone knew what that place was. Once you stepped onto that island, you were fair game for the wealthy who came and went there. I begged them not to do it. I begged until my throat went raw. They didn't listen. They let those rich men take turns tormenting me. A few days later, photos of what had happened to me on the island were delivered straight to my fiance, Agnes Wright, the heiress of one of the capital's top families. She didn't defend me. Instead, she turned around and publicly announced her engagement to the true heir. During an interview, someone asked about me. Her whole body trembled with anger as she snapped him. I never thought he'd turn out like that, running wild overseas, sleeping around like some kind of degenerate. It's disgusting. My parents put on a show of heartbreak. We sent him abroad to study out of kindness. Who knew he'd behave so disgracefully? From now on, the Yule family has no such son. After I was tortured to death on that island by those so-called rich people, my fiancé and the true heir held a wedding worth tens of millions, was broadcast live across the internet, and drew attention from everywhere. But even more spectacular than their wedding was the wedding gift I sent them. When the wedding host held up the gift, boos immediately rose from the crowd. Isn't he overseas? What kind of stunt is he pulling now? As if being shameless wasn't enough. How dare he ruin young Mr. Ralph's wedding? Exactly. Good thing Miss Agnes didn't marry him. Otherwise, she'd have been tricked into a marriage without even knowing it. My soul floated in the air. My eyes were locked on that gift. I was already dead, so how could I have sent anything? Agnes Wright lowered her eyes, and I couldn't tell what she was thinking. I'd expected her to stand up for Ralph the way she always had. But this time, she only said, "Open it, let's see what it is." The guests immediately began whispering again. Jacob was Miss Agnes's former fiancé. After all that shameless cheating behind her back, of course she wants to see what kind of trick he's up to. Ralph tried to stop her, but Agnes had already opened the box. Inside was an old phone. I recognized it instantly. It was mine. On the screen were 7 unwatched videos. The crowd buzzed louder. Don't tell me it's the nudes he took overseas. Ha! Is Jacob trying to blackmail Miss Agnes with those photos, hoping she'll take him back? That wouldn't surprise me. Didn't he used to be some kind of influencer? You can tell what sort of trash he is. There's nothing he wouldn't do. More than anger, I felt confusion. How did my phone end up here? Mother rushed forward and snatched it away. This is outrageous. What is Jacob trying to do? This is Ralph's wedding. He's clearly here to cause a scene. What an ungrateful wretch. Even his gift brings bad luck. Father was even more direct. He grabbed the phone and raised it, about to smash it to the floor. Throw it away. I don't want it ruining Ralph's wedding. I let out a bitter laugh. So they still didn't know I was dead? Or maybe the moment they sent me to that island, they had already decided I was as good as dead. Just as the phone was about to hit the floor, Agnes suddenly stepped in and caught it. Her brows tightened as she looked at my parents. I said, "Open it." My parents froze. The guests went silent too. Then Agnes unlocked the phone and tapped the first video. The screen showed the day Ralph first returned to the Yule family stood timidly at the doorway, his eyes red, looking pitiful. The moment he saw me, he dropped to his knees and started crying. "Jacob, I know you don't want me back. I'm begging you. Please stop sending men to beat me up." As soon as Mother heard that, she rushed over and slapped me across the face. "You hired men to beat Ralph up. How can you be so vicious? He's your brother. Can't you tolerate him?" The phone slipped from my hand and hit the ground. I stumbled back, stunned. She didn't listen. She pointed at me and scolded. "Remember this, you're only an adopted son of the Yule family. Know your place. Don't you dare covet what belongs to Ralph." Before the video finished, my parents started to panic. "We had it investigated," Father shouted. It was Jacob who hired men to beat Ralph. He even threatened him not to come back to the family. We're not accusing him without reason. The video kept playing on the screen. I picked up the fallen phone, trembling, and let out a quiet sigh. I really didn't. Then the camera swept over my pale face. On my arm, several shocking bruises, purple and red, were clearly visible. The guests noticed it too. "What happened to Jacob's arm?" Mother hurriedly explained. "He staged all of this. He's always been good at playing the victim to gain sympathy. Just wants attention." The live stream comments exploded, and every insult was aimed at me. Even a guy can be this scheming. He's got a whole set of lies ready. He looks innocent, but he's rotten to the core. No wonder the Yule family kicked him out. Ralph smirked. At just the right moment, he cut in softly. "Agnes, today is our big day. Let's not watch this anymore." Even if Jacob really did hire someone to beat me up, he's already been punished. I won't hold it against him. I almost laughed. Punished? Ralph. Does your conscience not hurt when you lie like that? But Agnes ignored him. Her gaze stayed fixed. On the screen, cold and steady. Is that so? She said. And I'd like to see how he staged all of this. With that, the second video began to play on screen. I was adjusting myself in front of the camera, preparing to record an audition tape. I hadn't come from a professional acting background, but over the past few years, I'd acted in a few small TV dramas and gained some recognition. A director had noticed me and invited me to audition. I told myself that since I wasn't the legitimate heir, I had to become good enough on my own, good enough to stand beside Agnes. Then the door opened. Ralph walked in looking guilty. Jacob, I just got back. But mother and father have moved you to the servants' quarters. You're not upset, are you? Before I could answer, his expression twisted. Then he burst out laughing. You idiot. Can't you see mother and father only care about me? And you still have the nerve to stay in this family? I just casually told them. You hired men to beat me up, and they immediately wanted to kick you out. Isn't that hilarious? I didn't want to argue with him, so I said coldly, it's not funny, Ralph. I won't take what's yours. And don't come to me with this again. Maybe it was because I didn't react the way he wanted, but that only made him angrier. He suddenly grabbed my hair, his face twisting with rage as he shouted, Jacob, how dare you say you won't take what's mine? Agnes is mine. If you hadn't stolen my place as the Yule family's heir, how could you be the one marrying her? I'm telling you now, call off the engagement. Otherwise the injuries on your body won't stop here. The video cut off abruptly. For a few seconds, the hall fell completely silent. Then someone in the crowd shouted, what's going on? So the one being bullied all along wasn't Ralph. It was Jacob. Jacob never hired anyone to beat Ralph. It was all slander. Then the one who staged everything was Ralph. My parents' faces went pale as they looked at Ralph. Ralph's eyes immediately reddened. In a pitiful voice, he explained, you've misunderstood. That was just me rehearsing with him. At the time, he was busy preparing for auditions. Those were lines he gave me. He told me to act along with him, as if he had suddenly thought of something. Father frowned and immediately backed him up. I didn't expect Jacob to be this scheming. This was clearly a trap he set up in advance. Mother nodded repeatedly. And Ralph is just too kind, helping him rehearse like that. Now he's using that video to smear Ralph. I bet he already ruined himself. Since he can't be the Wright family's son-in-law anymore, he doesn't want Ralph to have that chance either. How vicious. The crowd started murmuring. That's true. He's filthy. I saw all those photos. There's no way he was forced. Exactly. He had a great socialite from the capital and still threw her away. Who knows what he was thinking? So that's what happened. No wonder the Yules feel nothing for him. Brought it on himself. Even as a soul. I couldn't stop shivering. Instinctively, I looked at Agnes. We had been together for 10 years. Please let her not believe them. At last, Agnes smiled faintly. I'd like to know what he was thinking, too. Let's watch the next video. As she spoke, Agnes tapped open the third video on the phone. In it, I was facing the camera, grinning from ear to ear. Agnes, I passed the audition. Aren't I amazing? I'm going to buy you a gift. Something that proves I can be rich and successful, too. But what should I get you? You already have everything. Got it. I'll buy that puzzle you've loved for so long. Can put it together, and when we finish it, you'll have to say yes to my proposal. I'm so smart. I rested my chin in my hands, eyes bright with excitement. A few comments flashed across the live stream. Wow, Jacob looks so gentle here. Is this really the evil son? Did I see wrong? Agnes's hand trembled slightly, her expression complicated. Ralph immediately grabbed her hand. Agnes, Jacob is your past. I'm the one marrying you now. Let's stop watching this, okay? When she still didn't respond, he looked hurt. There are so many people here. You're embarrassing me. Mother quickly joined in. Exactly. Jacob's living abroad now. Living the high life. He's long forgotten all about you. You'd better stop looking. No. My spirit hovered beside Agnes, desperate to tell her I hadn't forgotten. To everyone's surprise, Agnes only smiled faintly. She brushed Ralph's hand away and kept watching on screen. I was still happily planning the future when Ralph pushed the door open and walked in. What's got you so happy? Covering his mouth, he pretended to be surprised. Wait a minute. You actually thought Director Levinson passed your audition? I froze. What do you mean? Ralph took out his phone and turned on the speaker. Director Levinson, how is Jacob's acting? On the other end came a disgusting, oily chuckle. He's just an amateur. You wouldn't believe it. I told him to undo his belt. And he was coy at first, but in the end, he did it anyway. No shame at all. Yet he dreams of becoming a big star. What a joke. My blood ran cold. My face burned with humiliation. I pointed at Ralph, my voice shaking. Why are you doing this to me? Ralph crossed his arms and looked down at me. I'm just teaching you a lesson. You'd better not touch what's mine. Hearing the argument, my parents rushed in. The moment Mother saw me, she immediately shielded Ralph. Jacob, are you bullying Ralph again? Father glared
At me.
Where are your manners? I clenched my teeth and said nothing this time, because I knew explaining was useless. Ralph suddenly raised his voice. Mother, Jacob said earlier that in this house, it's either him or me. Is that true? You? Mother trembled with rage and slapped me again and again. I'm sending you away. You're leaving immediately. Ralph choked up. Why not send him to Exile Island? I'll teach him how to behave. Exile Island. I had heard of that place. It was an island where the wealthy traded power and people. No. I dropped to my knees and clutched Mother's pant leg. I don't want to go there. Please. I don't want to go. She kicked me away, her face full of disgust. Don't want to. You're leaving tomorrow morning. Then I thought of Agnes and shouted, I'm Agnes's fiance. You can't send me to Exile Island. The only answer was another sharp slap. Father sneered. Once you're on that island, and reduced to nothing more than a plaything, do you think the Wrights would still want you when that happens? The only one who can marry into the Wright family will be Ralph. Even now, as a ghost, I could still feel the burn on my face. It felt like my parents, whom I had lived with for more than 20 years, had never loved me at all. The video ended. Someone in the audience immediately asked, wasn't Jacob supposed to have gone abroad? How did he end up on Exile Island? If he went there, could he even come back in one piece? Ralph panicked. He rushed forward, trying to snatch the phone. The videos are fake. Jacob made all of this up. He went there of his own free will. It's because he had no self-respect. But before he could touch the phone, the Wright family's bodyguard slammed him to the ground. My parents tried to step forward, too, but one look from the Wrights froze them in place. Agnes's eyes were red now, her voice trembling. What exactly did Jacob go through on that island? She stared at the phone in her hand, then lifted her gaze, cold and sharp. We'll watch it. The live stream comments had ground to a complete halt.
Not a single pixel of
text scrolled across the massive screen behind the altar. The silence in the extravagant banquet hall was so profound that the clinking of a dropped fork sounded like a gunshot. Agnes didn't blink. Her thumb hovered over the screen, her manicured nail trembling just a fraction of a millimeter. Agnes, please. Ralph sobbed from the floor, his cheek pressed against the polished marble where the bodyguard held him down. It's AI. It's a deepfake. He's just trying to extort us. You know how good he is with technology. Agnes didn't even look at him. Play the fourth video, she commanded. The silence. She tapped the screen. The lighting in the video was completely different. The warm, luxurious glow of the Yule Manor was gone, replaced by the sickly, flickering fluorescent hum of a cargo hold. My face filled the frame. The collective gasp in the room made my ghostly form ripple. I looked terrible. My lip was split, a jagged crust of dried blood tracking down my chin. My right eye was swollen shut, the surrounding skin an ugly canvas of yellow and black. The camera shook violently, perfectly capturing the rhythmic, sickening sway of a ship on the open ocean. I don't have much time, my recorded voice whispered, hoarse and terrified.
I
paid one of the deckhands my watch to let me keep my phone. I'm on a boat. They blindfolded me, but I heard the captain talking. We're bound for Exile Island. In the background of the video, a heavy metal door clinked. I flinched on screen, my breath catching in my throat. I shoved the phone down the screen, going black, but the audio kept recording. Hey, pretty boy, a gruff, unfamiliar voice laughed. Don't look so pale. The clients are gonna love you, especially the VIPs. Word came down from your own brother to make sure you get the premium treatment. Please, my voice begged in the darkness. I have money. My fiance, the Wright family, they can pay you double whatever Ralph paid you. The man's laughter was like grinding stones. The Wright family? Kid, the clients on this island are the families. Nobody's coming for you. A sickening thud echoed through the speaker. A wet cough. Then, the video ended. The silence shattered. The live stream chat exploded so fast it was just a blur of white light. Did he just say his own brother paid for the premium treatment? Call the police. Call the police now. This isn't a prank, oh my God, he's actually bleeding. The Yules trafficked their own son? Father stumbled backward, knocking over a tower of champagne glasses.
The
Crystal shattered, cascading over his expensive Italian shoes. It's a misunderstanding, he stammered, his face the color of wet ash. We just sent him to a disciplinary camp. We didn't know. Mother was hyperventilating, clutching her pearls so tightly the string snapped, scattering white beads across the floor like teeth. He deserved to be disciplined. He was out of control. Agnes, you have to believe us. Agnes slowly raised her head. The look in her eyes wasn't anger.
It was a
Terrifying, absolute emptiness. It was the look of an apex predator realizing it was standing in a room full of prey. A disciplinary camp, Agnes repeated, her voice perfectly level, carrying effortlessly over the panicked murmurs. The fifth video. She tapped the screen again. The crowd didn't gasp this time. Someone in the second row actually screamed. The video was taken from a hidden angle, likely shoved into a gap in the stone wall of a cell. It showed a lavishly decorated but windowless room. In the center of the room was a heavy iron bed. I was chained to it. My shirt was gone. My torso was a roadmap of fresh lacerations, cigarette burns, and deep purple bruising. A man walked into the frame. He was wearing a gold masquerade mask, but his voice was unmistakable. The greasy, arrogant chuckle belonged to director Levinson. You see, Jacob, Levinson sneered, unbuckling his belt. I told you that you were just an amateur. You wouldn't give it up for a role, but your little brother Ralph reached out to me. Said he'd pay for my weekend getaway here if I made sure you learned your place. On the screen, my eyes were dead, staring at the ceiling.
why?
I croaked. Because, Levinson laughed, grabbing a handful of my hair. Ralph doesn't just want you gone. He wants you broken, he said, and I quote, make sure he's too filthy for Agnes Wright to ever look at again. Now, be a good boy. Agnes slammed her hand over the screen, pausing it. She couldn't watch the rest. I was grateful she didn't. I didn't want her to see what happened next. Even as a spirit, I felt a phantom ache in my bones, a cold terror gripping my non-existent heart. The banquet hall was descending into utter chaos. Guests were pulling out their phones, dialing 911. The reporters in the back of the room, who had been invited to broadcast the wedding of the century, were now pointing their high-definition cameras directly at the Yule family. Turn off the cameras, Father roared, lunging toward a cameraman. Sit down, Mr. Yule, Agnes said. She didn't shout. She didn't raise her voice. But two of the Wright family bodyguards immediately drew their firearms, aiming them directly at my father's chest. He froze, his hands raised, sweat pouring down his face. Agnes, Ralph wailed. He was trying to crawl toward her, dragging the bodyguard, who was holding his collar. Agnes, they manipulated the audio. It's all a setup. He's jealous. He's always been jealous of me. Agnes finally looked at him. She crouched down so she was at eye level with the man she had been about to marry just 10 minutes ago. Ralph, she said softly, do you know why I agreed to marry you? Ralph blinked, tears streaming down his perfectly powdered face. Because you love me. Because I'm the true heir. I agreed to marry you, Agnes whispered, her voice like cracking ice, because a week after Jacob disappeared, my company intercepted a wire transfer from your private account to an offshore shell company. $500,000. The memo line was blank. I knew you did something to him. I just needed to keep you close. Until I found out what it was. My soul shuddered. She knew? She didn't believe I ran away? All this time, the coldness, the sudden engagement, it was a trap? I've spent the last 6 months trying to find him, Agnes continued, standing
Up.
I hired private military contractors. I bribed port authorities. And all along you sold him to Exile Island. She looked down at the old phone. 6th video. She didn't hesitate this time. The screen flickered. It was completely dark. Just the sound of ragged, wet breathing. Agnes. My voice on the video didn't sound human anymore. It was the sound of a ghost. A hollow rattling in a shattered chest. If you're watching this, it means Elias kept his promise. He's the cleaner. Here. I gave him the puzzle ring I bought for you. He said he'd mail the phone to you. A coughing fit racked the audio, followed by a wet tearing sound. They went too far tonight. Levinson and his friends. I'm bleeding internally.
I can feel it.
It's cold. In the audience, women were sobbing. Even the hardened reporters had lowered their cameras, staring in horrified silence. I'm sorry, Agnes, my voice whispered from the darkness. I'm sorry I couldn't finish the puzzle with you. I'm sorry I wasn't the real heir. I tried. I really tried to be good enough for you. A long, agonizing silence stretched on the recording. Ralph, my voice suddenly sharpened, cutting through the dying weakness.
I
know you're watching this. I know you're standing next to her, wearing my suit, standing at my altar. You thought you could bury me in the dark.
But the dark is
where the monsters live. And I am going to drag you down here with me. I love you, Agnes. Don't let them. The audio cut to a sharp gasp, then a heavy thud. Footsteps approached on the recording. He's dead, an unfamiliar voice grunted. You sure? The Yule kid paid extra to make sure it was slow. Yeah, he's gone. Wrap him in tarp and dump him off the eastern cliff. The sharks will take care of the rest. The video ended. There was no seventh video. The final file was just a timestamp. Agnes slowly lowered the phone. She looked at the screen for a long time.
I
floated toward her, reaching out to touch her cheek, but my translucent fingers passed right through her skin. Agnes, I whispered. I'm right here. Don't cry. Please. But she wasn't crying. When she looked up, her eyes were completely dry.
They
were terrifyingly, impossibly dry. Lock the doors, Agnes ordered. The massive mahogany doors of the banquet hall slammed shut. The deadbolts engaged with a heavy, metallic clack. Dozens of Wright family security personnel stepped out from the shadows, forming an impenetrable perimeter around the room. What are you doing? Mother shrieked, backing away. You can't hold us here. We are the Yule family. You are the Yule family, Agnes corrected her, turning to the master of ceremonies who was cowering behind the podium. Give me the microphone. She took it, her voice echoing through the massive speakers, broadcasting live. To the millions of people watching online, to the authorities watching the stream, Agnes said, her tone absolute.
My
legal team is currently transmitting a dossier of evidence to the FBI, Interpol, and the United States Department of Justice. It contains the coordinates of Exile Island, the flight logs of Director Levinson, and the financial records of the Yule family. She walked slowly toward Ralph, who was now hyperventilating, thrashing weakly against the marble floor. You thought you won, Agnes said to him, her heel clicking against the stone. You thought because you share their blood, you were entitled to Jacob's life. I am the real son, Ralph screamed, his facade completely shattering, saliva flying from his lips. He was a stray dog. He stole 20 years of my life.
My
parents, my money, my fiance. I just took back what was mine.
He deserved to die.
In that gutter.
Slap.
The sound cracked like a whip. Agnes had struck him so hard her own knuckles
bled.
Ralph slumped against the floor, stunned. Jacob never took anything from you, Agnes said softly. Your parents gave it to him because they are vapid, status-obsessed parasites who only care about appearances. And the moment you showed up, they discarded him because he wasn't a perfect biological trophy. You aren't a victim, Ralph. You're a murderer. Agnes pulled her cell phone from the pocket of her wedding dress. She dialed a single number. Execute the hostile takeover, she commanded into the receiver. Dump all the Yule family stocks we've been shorting. Call in the debt on their properties. All of them. And trigger the morality clause on the Levinson studio. Acquisitions. She hung up and looked at my parents. By the time the police arrive in 5 minutes, your bank accounts will be frozen. Your properties will be foreclosed. The Yule conglomerate is officially bankrupt. You can't do this. Father bellowed, his face purple with rage. He lunged toward Agnes, fists raised. I'll kill you, you arrogant little bee. He didn't make it 2 steps. A bodyguard stepped in, driving the butt of his pistol into my father's stomach. The old man collapsed, vomiting onto the pristine white carpet. Mother fell to her knees, crawling toward Agnes, leaving a trail of tears and ruined makeup. Agnes, please. We didn't kill him. Ralph did it. It was all Ralph's idea. We just thought it was a camp. Spare us, please. Mother, Ralph shrieked, staring at her in disbelief. You're throwing me away, too. You ruined us, she screamed back at him, her maternal love evaporating the second her wealth was threatened. You evil little monster. We should have never brought you back. I floated above them, watching the family that had raised me tear each other to pieces. The irony was so thick you could choke on it.
For 20 years, I had.
Bent over backwards trying to please them. I had let them beat me, belittle me, and eventually send me to my death. All because I thought I owed them my life. But they had no loyalty. They had no love. They were just animals fighting over scraps. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Red and blue lights began to flash through the towering stained-glass windows of the banquet hall. The heavy doors were pushed open from the outside. Dozens of armed police officers flooded the room. Agnes Wright, the lead detective asked, stepping forward over the shattered
Glass.
These three people, Agnes pointed at Ralph, my mother and my father, conspired to kidnap, traffic, and murder Jacob Yule. The evidence is on that
Phone.
Arrest them.
No.
No, I'm a victim. Ralph sobbed as handcuffs were brutally ratcheted onto his wrists. I'm the heir. I'm the true heir. You're a corpse walking, Agnes whispered as he was dragged past her. Because if the state doesn't give you the lethal injection, I will spend every cent of my fortune ensuring you are torn apart in prison. The police dragged them away. The guests were ushered out, questioned, and
Dispersed.
within an hour, the grand banquet hall was empty, save for the overturned tables, the shattered glass, and Agnes. She stood alone at the altar. The massive floral arrangements of white roses mocked the silence of the room. I floated down, standing beside her. She picked up the old phone from the podium. She held it to her chest, right over her heart, and finally, the ice broke. Agnes sank to the floor, the layers of her multi-million-dollar wedding dress pooling around her like sea foam. She curled in on herself, and a sound tore from her throat, a raw, agonizing, animalistic wail of grief that shook my spirit to its core. Jacob, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. Jacob, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I was too late. You weren't, I whispered, kneeling beside her. I wrapped my translucent arms around her shoulders. She couldn't feel the warmth, but a sudden shiver ran through her, and she leaned into the space where I was kneeling. I'll burn it all down, she whispered to the empty room, her tears falling onto the cold marble. Levinson. The clients. Exile Island. I'll burn it all down for
you.
And she did. Spirits don't experience time the way the living do. Weeks and months blurred together into a montage of absolute retribution. I watched from the shadows as Agnes Wright waged a war the likes of which the elite class had never seen. Director Levinson was arrested 3 days later at an airport, trying to flee to a non-extradition country. Agnes had leaked the 5th video to every major news outlet on the planet. The public outcry was so violent that a mob had to be restrained by riot police outside his studio. When he was placed in a holding cell, he mysteriously suffered a broken jaw and 2 shattered kneecaps before his trial even began. Agnes's money reached very, very far. Exile Island didn't last the month. Agnes didn't just give the coordinates to the authorities. She hired an armada of private mercenaries. They hit the island 48 hours before the slow-moving international task force could secure warrants. I was there, floating above the cliffs. I watched as black helicopters descended, heavily armed men swarming the compound. I watched the wealthy, sick clients who had tormented me scatter like roaches in the light. They were dragged out in zip ties, their faces broadcast to the world. Politicians, CEOs, foreign dignitaries, Agnes exposed them all. The island was razed to the ground, the concrete bunkers blown wide open. My parents were denied bail. The bankruptcy went through, leaving them with absolutely nothing. I visited them once in their county jail, holding cells. My father had aged 20 years. His hair was entirely white, his eyes vacant. My mother spent her days rocking in the corner, muttering about her lost jewels and her high society friends who now pretended they had never met her. As for Ralph, his trial was a media circus. The defense tried to argue insanity, tried to blame my parents, tried everything. But my final recording was the nail in the coffin. He was sentenced to life in a maximum security penitentiary without the possibility of parole. The day he was transferred to general population, I stood in his cell. He looked up, shivering on his thin mattress, and for a split second, I think he saw me. His eyes widened in absolute terror, and he scrambled backward against the concrete wall, screaming my name. He would spend the rest of his miserable life looking over his shoulder, trapped in a cage, knowing the entire world despised him. It was over. The debt was paid in full. A year later, The autumn wind was blowing leaves against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Agnes's private study. The room was quiet, smelling of cedar and expensive
Coffee.
She was sitting at a massive oak table, dressed in a simple, comfortable sweater. Spread out across the table was a massive, 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle.
Was a
Replica of Van Gogh's Starry Night. The exact puzzle I had mentioned in the third video. The one I promised to buy her. She had bought it herself. For the last year, she had spent an hour every evening working on it in absolute silence. I sat across from her, resting my chin on my hands, just watching her.
She
Looked tired, but the heavy, dark circles under her eyes had faded. There was a quiet strength to her now, a grim peace. She picked up the final piece. It was a small fragment of the swirling blue sky. She held it between her fingers, staring at the empty space on the board. I found Elias, you know, she said softly into the empty room. The cleaner who mailed your phone. I bought him a house in the suburbs. He's safe. His kids are going to college on a full scholarship. I smiled. Thank you, Agnes. She traced the edge of the final puzzle piece. The authorities finally recovered what was left off the eastern cliff. They're bringing you home. Tomorrow, Jacob. I bought a plot for you under the willow tree by the lake.
the
One we used to sit under when we were teenagers. My ghostly form began to flicker. A warm, golden light started to edge its way into my vision. I looked down at my hands. They were becoming transparent, dissolving into something like starlight. The anchor of my anger, my grief, and my vengeance had been severed. There was nothing left holding me to this world. Agnes took a deep breath, a single tear escaping her eye and splashing onto the wooden table. I love you, Jacob, she whispered. I'll see you when it's my time. She pressed the final piece into the puzzle. It fit perfectly. I stood up. The golden light was blinding now, warm and inviting, pulling me upward. I walked around the table and pressed a ghostly kiss to the top of her head. I love you too. Live a good life, Agnes. A sudden gust of wind blew through the slightly opened window, ruffling her hair and carrying the scent of rain and autumn leaves. Agnes closed her eyes, a small, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time in a year. And then I was gone.